Even though Reedy Creek is no more, Disney out in California is trying very hard to get a special district set up, and they're moving forward with their Disneyland Forward project. That is, if the citizens of California say that they can do it. Let's talk about that on That Park Place. Good morning. Actually, it's good afternoon. Welcome here to That Park Place. I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and I am joined by my favorite expert in the California-based Disney theme parks. Actually, you're kind of an expert on more than just the Disney theme parks out there, aren't you?
Oh yeah. I've got knowledge on all kinds of theme parks out there, including Knott's, Universal, all kinds of stuff. But I will say, I am a particular extraordinaire on all things Disneyland Resort. So,
all right. That's why I always like to go to Mr. Vash Sky for these things. Today, I want to talk about something where this is, I don't want to say this is in the weeds. It is the Disneyland Forward project. And Blog Mickey has an article talking about the big plans out there. And one of our favorite authors, Mike, Mike, this is the first time I've read any of your work here, but I wanted to point out that this is posted by Mike. 2024 will be an important year for the Disneyland Forward project, and it all kicks off next week with a city council workshop scheduled for January 23rd, 2024. That's tomorrow, or maybe it's today if something has happened. At the workshop, which is open to the public, more details will be covered in a discussion about the project. We still don't expect anything close to a level of detail such as what specific attractions or offerings are included with the project, which will be completed over decades. But the city of Anaheim is expected to release a proposed development agreement. Vash, how has Disney generally done recently with their announcements of plans?
Oh, announcement of plans. That's kind of a that's funny. It's a lot of pie in the sky ideas, and honestly, this isn't too far off. A lot of people are looking at the concept art associated with this, obviously on the big hero splash page right up above there. People are looking at it going, "Oh man, we're getting all this stuff with Disneyland Forward," and it's like, no, hold your horses. This is all detailing what Disney might do eventually, maybe in 5 years, maybe in 30 years, when they get approval for Disneyland Forward, as it's all about really a rezoning thing. This is all about Disney wanting to use the land that they've already purchased out there in Southern California.
Right. So Disney already owns this land. So the only thing that they will need is the eventual approval. And I imagine they will continue to ask until they get a yes, because they only have to get a yes one time in order to be able to do what they want to do.
Yeah, and that's why they're kind of they're asking for they're trying to make it as amenable as possible. Let's say, right? It's just, hey, we just want to rezone. We're not asking for more land. We're not asking to buy anything. We're not asking to do anything that you guys don't like. That comes later, of course. But we had to set some groundwork first.
Right. Let's talk about that. This will be the second workshop that they're doing. The first workshop was in October. Currently, here's a look at the 2024 timeline for the project, which includes a city council hearing on whether or not to approve the project later this spring. January 23rd, city council workshop and an overview of Disneyland Forward and the proposed agreement. In February, a planning commission workshop with an overview of Disneyland Forward. March, a planning commission hearing with an expected vote. Then April, a second city council workshop, and then somewhere in April or May, a city council hearing, expected vote. As you've said, Vash, at a high level, the Disneyland Forward project is less of a project and more of a rezoning initiative in order to expand the Disneyland Resort theme parks and entertainment venues. The proposal calls for the allowing of theme park attractions alongside hotels on the west side of Disneyland Drive and theme park attractions alongside new shopping, dining, and entertainment to the southeast on what is today the Toy Story parking area. So that's pretty much the gist of the article itself. But let's talk about what is the differences between California and what's going on over there in Orlando. Of course, in Orlando, what was the long-standing arrangement over there in Orlando?
The long-standing arrangement going back to 1967 was the implementation of the Reedy Creek Improvement District, which was a special district or taxing district as afforded to the Walt Disney Company, essentially. It doesn't, it gets a little dicey there. But it was the establishment of a new government right in the middle of Central Florida, right there, overseeing all of Walt Disney World property, all of its twice the size of Manhattan's acreage, basically. And that allowed Disney to essentially capture what was supposed to be the regulatory body of that district and do whatever they wanted. And as we've learned with the audit recently, well, they did a lot more than maybe they probably should have. They didn't necessarily take into account a lot of the citizenry or the cities around that property.
Right, the citizenry that there should have been in those districts, as opposed to the 12 to 24 people that were fully controlled by the Walt Disney Company that owned property. Their owned property that Disney owned it before them and would own it after them and controlled the leases fully. So the some of the authority that they had there included the ability to build an airport, which they did at one point, build at least an airstrip, and the ability to build a nuclear power plant with impunity, or the power of eminent domain. So they could take land that did not belong to them. Now, they were wise enough to never actually do that.
This also gave them the ability to build at maximum density, for example, as we've heard that the board, in a last minute effort to, preserve the powers to Disney, they entrusted them to Disney. That's obviously going, being challenged in court. But you can see on your screen right now how that differs from Disneyland, because in the audit we learned that, hey, I-4 runs along that corridor right there, and a lot of the traffic that people have to navigate through on a daily basis, as we learned in the audit, a lot of that comes from Walt Disney World, in which they haven't been paying to support. This is very different in Disneyland, where you can see it. The Disneyland Resort juts up against the 5 there. The difference here being that, well, when you have that much traffic coming off to go to Disneyland, what kind of impact does that have on the surrounding community? Well, Disney, in this instance, had to file for an economic impact report back in the 1990s that stipulated that they could only build so many hotels, right, or hotel rooms. And with those hotel rooms, they had to have sufficient parking, and they had to have sufficient street access, and they had to have sufficient, infrastructure to support these things, and only to the maximum by which the city itself could support. That's the big difference here, and why Disney's sweetheart deal in Florida was a little bit lopsided.
Right. So the two things that I feel like we need to point out here is, one, the economic situation in Florida is still so much more advantageous to Disney. They don't have any neighbors for a long way off, and the Central Florida Tourism Oversight District really has no reason to say no to Disney on anything that they want to build, as long as it's up to code. And as long as Disney is paying impact fees and taxes. In the state of California, however, they have to work with the local businesses there and actually get buy-in from at least the city council, even though there could be greased palms and alleged greased palms over there in California. They still have to go through the public comment process here in order to do what they do. Vash, do you have anything you want to present here?
I do.
Wrap up.
I do. It's interesting you bring out the whole thing of presentment and also the businesses, because that's what impacted their original plans to build what you see before you right here, this parking structure on the other side of Harbor. Initially that was known as the Eastern Gateway Project, and the original plan for that Eastern Gateway Project would have seen a lot of the foot traffic along those businesses sidelined as they try to get to the parking structure, which inevitably gets them to the security gate, which inevitably gets them to the Disneyland Resort. A lot of that foot traffic would have been bypassed. Those businesses, assembled together and fought Disney very, very hard on that Eastern Gateway, on that portion of the Eastern Gateway project itself, which eventually Disney kind of folded and capitulated. Now with this Disneyland Forward, they're taking the businesses into account, preserving that foot traffic while also attempting to get this parking structure, which the Disneyland Resort obviously needs. But they're doing it in more of a way that's like, okay, hey, look, listen, we can be friendly with you. We're not going to just walk all over you. Essentially, Additionally, too, back in the day, when they tried to build Westcott, they tried to build a version of Epcot that you see in Florida, but for the West Coast, and which would have included not a spaceship Earth, but a space station Earth that would have been 300 feet tall in the middle of Anaheim.
Oh my!
The city was not happy about that, and its residents, thus though. So they eventually had to drop those plans as well because of the pushback that they were receiving. But it just kind of goes to show you that over out there in California, well, maybe they've gone too far into the regulatory angle. As opposed to Florida. But when it comes to Disney specifically, that's much more of a balanced relationship than it ever has been in Florida's history.
That's that is definitely stating it well. Of course, if you want to keep apprised of what's going on with Disneyland Forward, you can stay tuned here to That Park Place, and Vash's coverage here is probably second to none. That being said, if you like this video, please consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.